I was just wondering, because talking about tandem, men and women supposed to be working together, how do you see then queer relationships within that, if there's supposed to be this like natural order there?
Well, queer relationships are an anomaly. They are a biological anomaly. They just are, and they will operate on a completely different sort of wavelength, I think. And I think honestly, gays and lesbians are lucky in many ways because they don't have to deal with some of the very broad. I mean, like it's a little bit more egalitarian, I think, in a lot of cases, right? Yeah, no, it's one of those things that for centuries, while we were evolving in tandem, for the most part, gays and lesbians didn't really have they didn't really have a space to have their relationships, right? So I don't know whether I'm not quite sure what you're.
Oh, it was just like I guess because the assumption being that like I could so framing it as ego-psych in the ego-psych framework of women and men complement each other very well.
They evolved in roles of a gendered division of labor, essentially. And part of that labor was, being pregnant, breastfeeding, having, bearing the children, having them attached to you for up to 4 years in hunter-gatherer societies, right? And men doing, I don't think there's any society that's ever been found where the gender roles were reversed, where men stayed home with the babies and the women went out, stabbing throwing sticks at musk oxes and stuff. So essentially, I don't know whether evolution has, the problem with evolution is it doesn't have a design, it doesn't have a purpose, it just is, right? And so you go back and you see why we are, well, it's because we were like that 1,000 years ago, and we were like that other thing 10,000 years ago, and whatever. But I kind of envy queer people that they don't have to deal with that. And we don't really need those gender roles right now. I'm not giving a prescriptive thing about traditionalism, because I'm not a traditionalist. But I'm not going to vilify the entire way we evolved. I'm not going to say that was wrong and oppressive and exploitative of women. I'm going to say that it is what it is, and it was what it was. And yeah, we maybe need to change some of those things, and relax the roles, but we don't seem to be doing that in a very even and balanced way. So, and I've often heard people say, what men need is for gay marriage to become a thing and be a thing for a while, because it'll set precedents in divorce court, right? In family court, if you've got 2 women or 2 men, it's a little harder to say, the baby goes with the woman, right? It's a little harder to just assume that. And the man is the one who pays. So, you guys, I think we can learn from a lot of the examples that are going to present themselves now that it's become more normalized for gays and lesbians to live openly in relationships with each other, right? You have a chance to lead by example, which is really nice. Anybody else? Next? Oh.
So I've watched a lot of your stuff, and Milo's and Leonard Poison's Sergeant Avant-Garde and several of them, and I've noticed you guys take down people like Lacey Green or Anil, point by point by point, which is pretty excellent. I was wondering if they had ever made a video in response to that, or if they'd ever tried to contact you, what your thoughts on why they don't.
Well, they call that harassment. So and abuse, and they call those hate videos. They don't call them debate videos or anything like that. And it's one of the really, really strange things about feminists. And I think actually feminism is a form of toxic femininity. That you can even have creationists. As an atheist, you can take a creationist's video and just rip the shit out of it like that, and he'll just come back and argue back, He'll just take your video and he'll answer it, and he'll be mean, and he'll be nasty, and he'll be insulting, and he'll call you a moron or whatever, but at least he'll respond, right? But feminists just will, like so many of them, just will not touch any of that. Anybody, and they especially won't touch it if somebody has a reasonable, rational argument. Like they're much more likely to answer some lunatic who just does a 3-minute screamy rant, where he just name calls, than they are to address somebody who puts out a coherent, rational, calm, polite argument. So, yeah, no, they won't do it. Yes?
Just follow that up, actually. I watched your debates, well, I watched all the debates with Kevin and Logan. There was a few of them. I mean, there was Allison, and I guess somebody before that, and then you did it. I mean, it was interesting, but I kind of think it was overkill in the sense that, I mean, maybe he was one of the only feminists.
He was.
In the debate. And nothing against him, I'm sure.
Oh, he's excruciating.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that he does some okay videos for that sort of caliber, but I mean, regardless, not to be cruel, but like his debating skills are they're not really up there. So what do you think about opening up are there a lot of people in sort of the MRA, MRM, anti-feminist sphere that are kind of really about opening up to more debates? Do you think it's...
Oh yeah, no, we've been wanting a debate for a long time. I mean, God, it was 2.5, 3 years ago. There was a professor at the University of Alberta, associate professor Christina Stasia. And it was during the Don't Be That Girl poster campaign that Men's Rights Edmonton put on, which got us a lot of press and a lot of rage. It was like the raging of the feminists. They were so mad. And the guy who was running for mayor who eventually won, he was like, "This is like morally reprehensible." And yeah, he was not impressed. But she started tweeting on Twitter that we at Men's Rights Edmonton, they don't show their faces. And so somebody asked her, "So who was that nice lady on the TV last night?" Because I had been interviewed by a whole bunch of TV stations, and there's pictures of Nick Redding in his Men's Rights Edmonton sandwich board all over the internet, right? Standing on the street in public with a Men's Rights Edmonton sandwich, like without a balaclava on. And and then she says, "What I meant to say was they refuse to debate in public." And so somebody contacted me. It was just some guy from like Wisconsin. He was like a university student. It piqued his interest, right? And he said, "I want to set up a Google Hangout debate between you and Dr. Stasia. Would that be okay with you? I will moderate it." He said, "I'm curious about feminism, right? I don't know much about it, but I'm curious about it, and I'd really like to make this happen." And I said, within 20 minutes, I was like, "Sure, yeah, no problem," right? He spent 2 months trying to get a hold of her, right? Asking her if she would do it. 2 months through every single point of contact, Twitter, Facebook, her professional email, her blog email, everything, right? Over and over and over. And then he finally emailed me and he said, she just won't even respond. Like, she won't respond to say no because she doesn't want to look like she's chickening out, I guess. And she certainly isn't going to say yes, right? Like, they just don't want to do it. And there was another feminist group in Edmonton that we actually tried to arrange a debate with, and they were interested at first. And then we said that we wanted to have it filmed and have it uploaded, unedited, to the internet. And then they were like, "No, we don't want to do it anymore."
Any questions? Yes.
So how do we get people to see themselves more as active agents rather than passive objects? And have you seen anyone make that transition through your activism?
I've seen women actually embrace their agency quite a bit. It's one of the things is that you actually have to embrace a whole new way of thinking, right? And it has to come from you. And even as you're doing it, right, the entire culture is going to think that you're wacky, right? as a woman, right? I get this question all the time, right? I don't understand why you do this, right? You're divorced, you got kids, you got an ex, you blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't understand why you're not a feminist. I don't understand why you didn't take advantage of family court. I don't understand why you don't collect child support. I don't get it. Like, this is all there for you. Why aren't you taking it? And I usually answer that by saying I never defined the word justice as whatever benefits me, right? But there's an expectation on the part of society that you're going to behave a certain way. And I think people really admire women who are, embrace their own agency, embrace their own power, take responsibility for their actions, hold themselves accountable. And it takes more work than it does for men because nobody else is going to hold you accountable. You have to do it yourself, right? Everybody's holding that guy accountable. Purple shirt, what the hell? What kind of man are you? So.
Do you care to comment on the last election?
On the last election, like the Justin Trudeau thing?
Yeah, how that might impact, say, perpetuating toxic masculinity.
It's better than the alternative. Like, the alternative was, I was looking out in my neighborhood. This is the first federal election that I've voted in 14 years, right? I don't vote. I only ever vote municipal because municipal, my vote counts, right? And federal, I just never bothered. But this time I did, because every time I'd leave the house to drive my kid to school or go to the grocery store, all I saw was orange signs everywhere. And I really didn't want that. I really didn't want to live in an NDP majority province in an NDP majority country, right? But yeah, Justin Trudeau, well, he thinks Gamergate's a hate movement, so, and he thinks that all good people should stand against it. So he can't be all bad. I don't have high hopes.
What do you think the public perception is going to be of the Red Pill documentary when it gets released?
Well, I have the feeling that it's going to be a very fair movie, a very fair treatment. I've talked to Cassie a few times, right? And she seems really genuine, and just given the fact that she could have taken money from feminist foundations and had it funded no problem, so long as she gave them creative control over the project. And she declined to take that money and needed to do a Kickstarter. I think she's really interested in doing a neutral, balanced look at things. I think that it's going to resonate with a lot of ordinary people, right? It seems to me that every time I'm on a plane, or every time I'm waiting at the airport, or every time I'm just, somebody says, oh, where are you going? And I say, oh, I got to go give a speech. And then they say, oh, about what? And I tell them, and I just come right out and tell them. I'm an anti-feminist, and I talk a lot about, things like fathers' rights to see their children and things like that. And the first thing out of their mouths will be like, about time, or it'll be, oh, my son hasn't seen his kids in 2 years, right? And I haven't seen my grandchildren in 2 years, or something of the sort. When I told ages ago, when I told my boss what I talk about online, and he's this like huge 7 foot tall, well, 6'7", 6'8", guy with one of those faces like, when playoff hockey and the coach is behind the bench and he's just like completely poker face, but he's chewing gum all the time. That's what my boss is like all the time. And like he's convinced me that I was fired several times, and then when I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, no, and walks away. Like your heart goes this way and your stomach goes that way, because he's so convincing. But I told him what I did, and he went, huh, and he walked away. And about 10 minutes he came back and he said, did you know that if I were to move in with a woman who already had kids, if I lived with her for 6 months, she could come after me for child support? And I'm like, yeah, I know. That's why I do this. So I mean, people know. They know all of this stuff. They just don't know that everybody else knows, right? And it's not socially acceptable yet.
I don't know anything about you. I was invited here to the cafe. Can you tell us a little bit about, where you come from and how you got to this way of thinking, and some direction or some ideas for fathers who haven't seen their kids for 2 years or 10 years? Oh, God.
I don't know if I can give that direction. I'm not a legal expert. I'm not a psychologist or a therapist. I think what men who are in that position most need is somebody who understands them and what they're going through and is compassionate but not pitying. Men have a hard time when they feel like somebody pities them, typically, usually. As far as me, I'm just a regular person. I graduated high school, grew up with working class parents, started working as a cook, then worked as a waitress, had 3 kids, got married, got divorced, found this stuff online, got interested in it, did a whole bunch of research. I obsessively researched. And actually Cassie said, Cassie J, the documentarian, said, when she initially contacted me, she said she was actually just looking for information on rape culture because she heard everybody talking about rape culture, and she thought she might do her next film on rape culture. And she stumbled across A Voice for Men, and the moment she started reading it, she said she had read obsessively article after article for about 3 days, right? And that's kind of the experience that I had. Just, it wasn't A Voice for Men, it was a different website, but I read article after article, and some of the stuff that they were saying was really harsh, right? These guys on these websites. But I mean, like, they're going through so much, some of them, and they're going to be angry, and it was just, I just found it was really interesting. And I think that maybe I have when I see people who are angry and lashing out, I have a little bit of a compassionate response to that. Like, I want to understand why they're mad. It's not something that, shuts me down and closes my ears. So I think that's probably why I got so interested. And then once I started doing it, like once I started writing about it, I got popular, and then feminists all started calling me a man, and because no woman would think the way you do, and then I went and put my face out there, and then I really got popular, and now I feel duty bound to do it, right? When you have men emailing you and saying, you're the reason I didn't commit suicide, right? Was I stumbled across one of your videos, and now I feel like somebody gets it, somebody understands. You feel like you have a responsibility to continue, so.
And I was just curious, do you think people would be as successful listening to you if you were a man speaking the same?
A man speaking the same thing? Booed out of the building. Booed out of the building. And because, I mean, this is sort of a friendly audience. You guys are all aware of what I'm talking about here. Nobody's sprung anything on you. You're not going to be shocked by what I say. But I've gone in front of, like yesterday, in front of audiences of libertarians who none of them have heard of any of it. They've never thought about it. Right, and they seem to react just fine to me. But I've also had men email me, even men email me and say, I stumbled across one of your videos, and I just want to say, I was really mad for the first 5 minutes watching it, and if you were a guy, I would have just clicked away and I wouldn't have listened. Right. So I mean, it really does temper the message when it comes out of a woman's mouth. It makes it less scary. I can get away with saying way more controversial things than most guys, so it's nice.
I was just realizing that for most, if not all, male dominance spaces or fields like video gaming, STEM, politics, you see like feminists sort of claiming that pretty much most, if not all of these places are
there's sex hostile against women. But of course, when female dominant field, that doesn't ever get mentioned. Do you feel that that's another example of like heterogency? And
Oh, yes.
so, if so, like, what do you think, if anything, should be done to develop such claims or attacks?
Oh, I think the best thing you can do is actually point out that it's happening. Like that's really that essentially when feminists, and it's really annoying because there are some women out there, right, who thrive in those spaces. They love those spaces. They don't want those spaces to change. They don't want the shit talking to stop when you're playing, Call of Duty or whatever, right? They don't want to not be able to, kind of dish it out and take it and the whole bit. They don't want it to change. They like it like that. And feminists then come in and tell the world that those women are victims of that space, right? And they're literally objectifying these women. They're taking these women who are happy in the space, who feel like this is a space that suits me, and they're saying those women are victimized by that space. They are the victims. And so I think the more you can point that out, and the more women especially point that out, right? That yeah, and no, I don't have internalized misogyny, and no, it's not only that I just haven't been properly trained to spot misogyny. Like the guys that I'm playing Team Fortress 2 with, they don't hate me, right? And they're really not any meaner to me than they are to each other. I mean, we're just having fun here. So essentially, I think that's the only thing you can do is just point it out when, women, if you're in a space that's male dominated and feminists decide that they're going to speak for you, just tell them you don't speak for me. That's all you got to say. You do not speak for me. So.
My question is in regards to like the phenomenon of SJWs or social justice whiners, or warriors. Sorry.
Social justice wieners, you mean?
Yeah, wieners. And this aspect of political correctness. A few years ago with the internet, I just used it for email and videos and stuff, but I noticed that they have never had this voice, or never been this loud until recently. And a lot of SJWs come into all types of websites, and they will cause trouble and get people blocked, get people kicked out, shut down sites. So internet, it can be a dark and dingy place sometimes, but there's a lot of good things about it. So my question to you, your personal opinion, is what changed suddenly from a few years ago where everybody would just brush them off, like, oh yeah, whatever, you don't know what you're talking about, to giving them this power, this complete, and I think of Jessica Valente for concept, and Lacey Green, how did they come into power so quickly?
No idea. No idea. Because it's really bizarre. Because whenever they do polls, right, they find that people who identify as feminist are in a minority, and people who identify as sort of social justice-y, activist-y, kind of really, that's social justice is like the most important thing that I'm going to talk about online and blah, 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 right? They were in a minority, and I don't know whether they're just really good at making people think there's lots of them. And there's this guy online, he's kind of a bit of a stalker of mine. He's not a feminist, he's not an MRA, he's just a lunatic. And he follows me from place to place, and he leaves these horrible comments and stuff. And I think that guy, and he's got a very distinctive way of commenting, right? And he always refers back to the Manhood Academy guy, right? Okay, and so you can tell it's him. It doesn't matter what the username is. You can tell it's him. And that guy's got to have 150 sock accounts. And if you didn't know better, you'd think he was Legion, right? And yeah, no. And I think that maybe they've got something like this going on. In fact, oh my God, there was a press release about some hashtag that had been hijacked, some feminist hashtag that has sort of been hijacked by people who think feminists are doofuses or whatever, right? And some trolls, some MRAs, some people who are just these women are crazy, or they like this is stupid, so I'm going to make fun of it. So it got hijacked and it got started using for the opposite purpose of what it was intended for. And so they did a press release, the organization that came up with this hashtag, and they actually recommended their members, if you don't feel safe, you know, because what we need you to do is we need you to like tweet bomb, right? You need to hashtag bomb, so that we take back control of the hashtag, so that more of the tweets represent our idea of this hashtag than the trolls, right? If you don't feel safe tweeting under your regular account, feel free to make some sock puppet accounts, right? Some alternate accounts, and do it that way, right? So I mean, like, they're actually recommending that they make alternate.
Was that the Masculinity So Fragile?
I think so, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if that was the one, but yeah. So.
In this digital age where pretty much everyone can be their own celebrity, like looking at both sides of this argument, do you think we're just breeding like a whole generation of professional victims?
Oh, we started breeding them a long time ago. You know.
I found it now because
it started with Dr. Spock and the self-esteem movement and helicopter parenting, and the pedophilia scare of the 1980s was instrumental in that. You know, when all of a sudden now your kids cannot be left unsupervised anywhere, and they always have to have structured time and arranged play dates and be supervised constantly. And I think that was really the beginning of this sort of special snowflake generation. It's compounded through, you know, a couple of generations, and I was actually just catching the tail end of the self-esteem movement when I was in elementary school. So. Oh, must be nice, because you know, when I was a kid, I would go out on my bike and I'd just pack some sandwiches and some water in a backpack, and I'd go with my buddy Darren, and we'd just like spend all day riding all over town, and then my mom would be like, "Come home when the street lights come on."
I spent like the first 10 years of my life just paying on forests most of the time. So
yeah, no, and now kids don't get to enjoy that. There was a couple who got investigated by Child Protection Services, I think in, was it Nova Scotia or something like that? Because they had a 10-year-old and a 5-year-old, and they allowed them to walk 1 kilometer unsupervised to play at the park.
I heard about that.
Yeah.
Actually, this gentleman's been waiting, John. I got a question too.
Yeah.
Just a quick question. Have you ever looked into feminism and you talked about sock puppeting and social justice movement? In my opinion, I've been through a lot, and I think it's more of a method of social control by the oligarchy that rules the corporate world.
I don't know whether it was the elites that thought it up, right? I think that there's too much psychology. There's too much of how we naturally are, even down to the way men's and women's faces differ. The way our physiology differs, the way our tear ducts are different and our tear glands. Women evolved to be criers, men did not. So there's too much of the sort of our perceptions and our ways of thinking about men and women for me to think that it was just like some big conspiracy to construct some like thing that they were going to dupe society with. But when those women at Seneca Falls started essentially their hate campaign, I think the elites looked at it and said, yeah, we can use this.
Because you mentioned that the majority of women don't espouse these views.
Yeah, no, they don't. But I mean, it's like feminist groups are funded by the government. They're funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and all of these other things, right? All of these powerful people.
There seems to be an attack on personal freedom and free will in society coming from every angle. And this is one of the oldest, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, the best way to attack, personal freedom is to, I guess, to be living with the knowledge that your entire life could be taken away from you on a woman's whim, and she spent 3 minutes convincing the judge that, yeah, he's never been violent, but I feel afraid of him now, and
trust me, I've been there.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to say I enjoyed your presentation.
Oh,
I've seen some of your videos.
Thank you.
competition absolutely kills a relationship, as you alluded to. And a lot of this dialogue and conversations going back and forth seems like more competition, and I don't see it as being a real solution. And I'm wondering if you have any ideas on how we're going to get out of this mess that's been created over the last 50 to 100 years.
Well, I think women are probably going to have to be the vanguard, and I mean it's a real shame, but when you have a situation where if a man is going to, if he's going to talk about feminism and the fact that it's unjust, right, or it's not about equality, it harms people, it harms men, it harms children, you know, whatever. He's either going to be, people are going to say he's dangerous, right, and angry, and he's not going to get any sympathy. Or they're going to say he's a whiny man baby, and he's not going to get any sympathy. Or he's essentially a privileged man who's just looking to hold on to his unearned privilege, in which case he's not going to get any sympathy. So in order to, like, women are going to need to break the ice. We're going to be the icebreakers. Men need to actually start advocating for themselves, but honestly, like, a friend of mine said that women sort of need to be human shields for men who want to do this kind of work, who want to raise awareness. We have to be the bulletproof vest for you guys, because they're not gonna come after us the way they come after you guys. I mean, like, we picked the name honey badger because the honey badger is renowned as the most fearless animal on the planet and all that. But you don't have to be fearless to do this as a woman. You really don't. You have to be fearless to do it as a man.
Well, I've been working with men for about 25 years on this, and I like what you just said.
You just need to wrap up. We only have 15 minutes left.
Yeah.
Then we have to answer.
I have a real softball that I really want to ask. Zoe Quinn just optioned her movie. She wants Scarlett Johansson to play her. When are you optioning your movie of your life, and who do you want to play you?
Well, I'd say Charlize Theron, except for that I think she's like the same age as me, and it'd have to be somebody, I don't know. What kind of question is that? I'm only saying because she looks good with short hair. I have no idea. Oh, Emma Watson.
Go ahead.
I mean, you went first. You go first.
I've noticed that one of the reasons why these debates happen is because people are dumb. And they don't use facts to make their decisions. They're not objective. The vast majority of the population is subjective. So if they see a man fighting for what he sees as equality, they just see a man fighting a woman.
Yeah.
It's always a person. So how do we get out of that when, you know, almost everything is self-interest, emotional responses, and in some ways delusions?
Oh, one of the toughest things about that, and it's really, really difficult. The best way that I've found is to choose a public space, like the comment section of an article or a video or, you know, a forum or something like that. And if you want to actually, because if you're going to debate with a feminist, if you're going to, like, you know, challenge their ideas or whatever, you need to make sure you're not wasting your life. And if you're trying to convince them, you're probably wasting your life. You're there to convince the other people, the people that are watching, the people that are reading, the people that are listening, in which case you stay calm, you stay rational, you present your evidence, right? And when they start coming back with insults and yelling and throwing tantrums, then the silent people that you can't see, the invisible people reading that comment thread, they're going to make the right, you know, unless they're another feminist or another, you know, unless they're like too far gone. But essentially, the really difficult thing about what you said about people reasoning with their emotions, essentially, is that in academia, that's now seen as a legitimate tool of analysis and discourse, right? It's the subjectivity is seen as, in postmodern philosophy, subjectivity, unique experiences. There's no objective truth. There are no human universals. All of these things that my reality is real, right? Even if I'm thinking that like my neighbor's dog is telling me to kill people, that's real to me. And how dare you imply that it's not real? And in feminist ethics and feminist philosophy, they've essentially codified the ad hominem attack as a legitimate form of debate. It's called problematization. Go look it up. Standpoint theory, it really is impossible when you have emotional reasoning accepted as legitimate within scholarly discourse. Now you're just off in the weeds. Now, why would you even be objective? Because they can just cancel it out by saying, you made me cry, you're wrong, right? I mean, that makes me feel bad. It's I don't know how we're gonna dig our way out. One more.
Say the best for last, congratulations.
All right.
I just want to say that I was midway through reading Macbeth, so I'm very disappointed with this topic right from the get-go, but...
Well, it's like 1,000 years old.
Because you were like, I don't want to put up with this bullshit. This isn't English class. Jeez.
I have come to notice that what I would refer to as the manosphere or the red pill community online is really divided into three camps. The men's rights, you have the men going their own way, and you have the pickup artists / remote red pills.
Right.
And I have begun to notice that things have become more ideological in a way. I've seen this with people who are really unwilling to budge on opinions. Do you fear that eventually the pendulum might swing and it will be, ironically, the progressive activists who will be the ones that are putting arguments forward that are right, and us who are stuck on our way because we believe we are right? That wasn't as eloquent as I thought it could be.
No, it makes sense. That might actually happen. I mean, there is a chance that could happen in certain areas, certain situations, that we might actually become more polarized, move away from center, become more sort of radical, and start making really bad ideological arguments. And social justice warriors, they're like broken clocks. They're right on occasion, right? They're correct on occasion. But I think that I wouldn't worry about it so much because of, the Evo psych that I didn't quite really explore the way I wanted to here today. But it was just going to go too long. Because of that, I don't think we're ever going to get to a point where the pendulum swings in men's favor and women become horribly oppressed, and I don't think that's ever going to happen. In fact, I don't think we're ever going to have real equality in the areas where men are marginalized right now. We're going to have a correction, right? But it's not going to go all the way to bang equal treatment under the law. It's never going to do that. And it's going to still want to creep back in the same direction that it's going now, because that's just the way we are, and that's just the way we see men and women. So I think we have to worry about us, right, as individuals, screwing up like that, but I don't think that us screwing up is going to have any kind of big impact on society. It's not going to change any legislation. We're not going to become dangerously powerful or anything like that. So I think we'll probably be okay.